Education and Development Hub, or the Hub as you know, is pleased to have you joining us again, both in person and virtually for this exciting day. For those who don't know, my name is Lindy Wagner, and I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Inclusive Excellence, Education and Development. To get started, again, for those who are on Zoom, we will have someone monitoring the chat. So later, after our featured speaker has finished, we will have time for question and answers. So feel free to enter any questions that you might have into the chat at that time, so we can make sure that our presenter gets those. And for those of you in person, you'll also have a chance to ask questions once the remarks have concluded, and we have staff in the space there to help you get your remarks to the speaker as well. So to get started, I also wanted to make note that our president of the SIU system, President Mahoney, couldn't join us here today, but he wanted to make sure that you knew that he was sad about that, that he had a scheduling conflict, and that he sends his regards and hopes to attend future events. So I wanted to be sure that you all knew that as well. However, we do have a special speaker for our welcome remarks here with us today. And at that point, I'd love to welcome, yes, our SIUE Chancellor, Dr. Randy Pembroke, to the floor. He attends so many of our events and does so as much as possible. And again, we always appreciate that support, especially because he has a very busy schedule and often is trying to squeeze us in at any moment possible. So again, thank you so much, Chancellor, for that. We really do appreciate your regular presence and your dedication to the students. So with that, if we could have those in the real space, in-person space, give us a round of applause, and those in the virtual space, feel free to use the emoji, and we'd like to welcome Chancellor Pembroke to the floor.
Well, thank you, Lindy. I guess I would start by saying I think everybody has really busy schedules, so we're all in this together. Well, welcome, everyone. It's so great to have you with us today, and I wanted to say particularly welcome to LGBTQIA+ History Month. And as I was looking at the history of this History Month, I was kind of thinking, do we think of this as a new event, or do we think of this as an established tradition? And I guess it just depends on how new you think new needs to be, right? This is actually 27 years that we have been celebrating LGBTQIA+ History Month. So new, established, I'll leave that up to you. But it's exciting, no matter how you think about it. This month, October, we're going to be focusing on a lot of different things. And so I just wanted to say that I hope that you attend lots of events this month because there are many things going on. We are going to be recognizing National Coming Out Day, inclusive conversations. We're going to be talking a lot about mental health, particularly in the LGBTQIA+ community. And so I know that you'll find many of these things very helpful, very important. So please come to as many of them as possible. I also want to say that we're going to be recognizing individuals along the way in the month of October, particularly people who have functioned as role models, people who have built communities, people who have been really important in the civil rights and the human rights struggle. So there'll be lots to learn, and we'll be reflecting on important people. I also wanted to say, speaking of important people, thank you to several SIUE faculty and staff who make such a difference on our campus. So let me start with Nick Niemerg, who I think many of you know. He is the chair of our Safe Zone Committee. So Nick, thank you. Thumbs up, applause for Nick. I want to say thank you to Rex Jackson, who is the Safe Zone website manager, and he is the past chair of the Safe Zone Committee. And then Matthew Burgess, yes, thumbs up and applause for Rex. Matthew Burgess is the president of the Gay Straight Alliance. So thank you to all of you for all that you do, all the contributions that you make. We appreciate it. And now I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker today. And our speaker is from the Metro Trans Umbrella Group, Sayer Johnson. Sayer is the executive director and co-founder of the Metro Trans Umbrella Group. He also, I found very interesting, is the producer of a documentary called Trans Geek Movie. So Sayer, we want to say thank you for being with us today. We look forward to your remarks. And I want to close with a quote. I was fortunate enough to go to South Africa right after the transition of power when Nelson Mandela came to be president. And he said something that I actually have in my office taped on a wall. And I think it's really important. And I hope that we'll think of this many times during the month of October. But President Mandela's quote says this: if people can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. So I hope we'll all be thinking about ways that we can show love to each other. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and enjoy October.
Can I take off my mask? Okay. Great. I'm going to just go to one particular slide that I'm going to keep on. Slide it. This one.
Can everyone see that okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Hello, thank you very much for having me. My name is Sarah Johnson, and I use he, him, his as my pronouns. I am the executive director of the Metro Trans Umbrella Group, and I'm happy to be here today. Now, I've gone round and around with what I was going to talk about today because I never really know. I'm a big fan of SIUE. I live in Edwardsville. I've loved lots of folks that have attended this university, and I know lots of professors. So I'm always, feels like hometown when I get to come here and do this. So it's exciting. But I think I just landed on something that I'm going to share with you today. And I'm also open for questions and answers if you have any afterwards. But I'm going to tell you, it's kind of sermonish in a non-religious way. And it's about my love of being a transgender person. I love being a transgender person. I love it. If I were a preacher, my good news would be of that way that I have been able to navigate the world from a perspective of having a view of both sides. I have had the privilege of being deep in women's spaces, in women's experiences. I've had the gift of a woman's body that held two babies and gave me the gift of being a parent who gave birth. I've had the adventure and privilege that white men receive in this world, being in spaces that was once forbidden, being able to walk with a different kind of confidence, being able to grow a pretty amazing beard. What an amazing and lovely gift it is to be a transgender person. I'm a transgender evangelist. I am also witnessing my own liberation. My own people's liberation is occurring right now, and I am on the front lines of that liberation. And as Desmond Tutu once stated, liberation is costly. And because of the work that I do, I'm aware that indeed I do in order to step into ourselves, we have to make brave declarations. We have to be willing to risk everything for one thing, our identity. That is what I feel like bravery is when it comes down to it: acceptance and love and knowing what you need to do to survive. For me, to preach this good news of my experience, it discounts our liberation. It whitewashes it, literally, mansplains it, literally, because I am an exception and I'm well aware of the privilege that I stepped into as soon as I emerged as to who I am. It is both beautiful and brutal. Many of you have maybe heard some variant of, oh my gosh, random transgender person, you are so brave. It generally comes from a really well-meaning ally, a cis person, wanting to compliment and connect and feel the need to center our experience as courageous or commitment to being our true selves. Rebecca King explained it really well. She said, putting all trans people together under the label of brave is easier than speaking the truth of being trans. Trans is dangerous and difficult and heartbreaking and isolating. And cis people don't often support us through that danger and difficulty. That's an uncomfortable truth. However, acknowledging it would call upon cis people, to step up and fight and make the world a better place for trans folks. Being called brave seems like a compliment. It's certainly intended as one. It's a way of expressing admiration and support and love. It's a blanket assignment of bravery to every single trans person. Unintentionally furthers the mindset of being trans is fundamentally different and implicitly lesser than the experience of being cis. Calling all trans people brave results in distancing that person and saying it from the experience of being trans. It's often followed by, I can't imagine what you're going through. Or even worse, I could have never done that. That speaks to a depressing lack of creativity and imagination in a world of computer phones and safe rooms and artistic expression, TikToks, Facebooks, ways that we engage in the world. We are creative individuals. Why can't folks envision enough to see what it might be like to have one's physical body and mental identity be at odds with each other? I don't buy it. We all know that systems are created. Gender is a construct, and trans expansive folks are simply deconstructing it and decolonizing it. Lumping all trans folks into a category of brave also plays into a classist idealism, a racist idealism, ableism. My bravery is very different from that of a Black transgender woman. Our organization feeds Black transgender women. We clothe Black transgender women on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The bravery of walking in the world as a Black transgender woman with a target on your back, the systematic violence that Black trans women face, the deeper impacts of oppression. There's also the bravery of a young white trans woman speaking her truth to her hyper-masculine father with the background of fear of being assaulted. Or what about the bravery of the 50-year-old transgender woman finally? The bravery of a 50-year-old college-educated transgender woman finally declaring herself, knowing full well her career is over, her spouse will try her best to love her, but just isn't that queer. That's the reality. My bravery navigating the world as a binary man who's very passable is very different than my non-binary siblings who have identity that navigates in a world, in a planet that is not designed for them. It is always pink or blue in most public spaces. It is a radical act of expression to accept what bathroom you walk into. Being neither man nor woman, the simple act of picking a team when it comes to basic body functions, that's what's brave. That's what's complicated. That's why this is so layered. I really do feel like the narrative of bravery gets cis fucks off the hook. Like, look how brave you are, trans person. It gets you so like, you don't need me. You don't need me at your seat, at your back to get you these situations handled. You're so brave. We know that we know what we need are brave allies. Put yourself out there to interrupt transphobia. Don't allow us to be the butt of the joke or the red herring thrown into political fights. Politically be brave. Verbally be brave with your friends. Be brave with your votes and your time and your money. Be brave when you're in the locker room and you hear some fellas talking about that one he, she in the parking lot or that one he, she that they engaged on some other occasion. Be brave and interrupt those things. Don't tolerate those things. When you see folks exhibiting transphobic behavior, step in and use your cis body and your cis privilege to interrupt it. It's brave to love yourself so much that you make a decision that may end up with you being your only sense of support. That itself is self-love. And that's what we can end up with. You know, I bounce back and forth with the idea of brave and bravery. This is less of a trans 101, more of a personal narrative, a personal story. I do believe that knowing transgender people makes it harder to hate us. We all have stories. Part of my story is I'm a parent. I start with that a lot and I ease them in. But it welcomes people in too. You know, I love my kids just like any other human would love their kids. One human in particular, with a lion's head of yellow hair and piercing blue eyes, is the one human I think of when I think of brave. He came to me through his biological mother, pulled from her body with a C-section, and he was in with her in the hospital for a few days, hopefully getting a good dose of love. but I don't know. He arrived, his eyes in the bluest way, a little pink bow glued to the top of his head. I whispered to him that he was perfect, and I loved him at first sight. And then that foster care dance began. We knew it was our job. I knew it was my job to love this child like he was my own and be prepared to give him back to a potentially unsafe situation. But I also knew that I was hardwiring his little brain and his heart to love. So that's what I did. Now I know this little soul, he knew that love too. He knew that he was mine and I was his. But somewhere in his being, I'm sure there was this consciousness of needing to be brave, to be in this world. The uncertainty was excruciating, but this little tiny human quickly became a part of my little quirky family. A little devil kid he was, really, bouncing off of things like a firecracker, bouncing off of things like a pinball. But I knew there was something in him. And at 9 years old, when he declared that he was a boy, I knew we were in for it. I assumed that the foster care system would blame the transgender person who was raising him, causing him to be a transgender person. But that indeed was not the case, because as soon as that child put those words out into the universe, I'm like, oh, let's wait, hold on. I don't know about that. You know, there's lots of ways to be a girl. You don't have to be a really feminine girl. You could be kind of a butch girl or not so a masculine girl. He's like, I'm a boy. Like, okay, all right, buddy, let's just wait. And we did. Year, 2 years, 3 years, me, transgender leader, transgender educator, love being transgender evangelist, was afraid of my child being brave and speaking his truth. But he kept speaking it. And I listened, and I cut his hair, and I bought his clothes, and I supported him. Then he went to school and declared to the school that this was what he was going to do, and they were going to start calling him by his name. And there was a little bit of panic in District 7, but then they grew with us, and they accepted this little child just like I did, because he's brave. But it was brave too for those teachers, because, you know, he might have been, I don't know for sure, I don't know for certain, but one of the inaugural trans kids in the District 7. They tried to do the best that they could. There were some mistakes. It's young. But some brave teachers stood up and interrupted transphobia when they saw it in the playground for the kids. Brave teachers leaned into my child and validated his name and interrupted kids when they would call him by the name that his mother had given him. My little kid, this dude, this man that I love so much, is the kind of person who interrupts racism and homophobia without fear of rejection or scorn. He interrupts his peers, he interrupts his teachers. He's gotten in trouble a few times for that, for interrupting racism in school. But I take him out for ice cream and tell him I'm proud of him because he's brave. He knows it's the right thing. He does it without paying attention to the consequences. Being so brave in an educational system that rewards conformity, he does it because it's the right thing to do. When that little person came out as trans, it didn't strike me as brave. I was frightened. But he taught me how to be a good ally and how to be brave. There's a disconnect, though, you know, between being a transgender adult and raising a transgender child. I'm afraid for him. I know that he is going to be privileged, as I am, being a white man in society. But then there's also the medical aspect of being a transgender person. And no amount of male privilege is going to protect me from that when I'm in a situation where my body is vulnerable and they come up and they look at my history. So that's when I need other folks around me to be brave. Acceptance, interruptance, loving. I don't know. I think it's I am a trans evangelist. It's a beautiful life. And I love my child. And I reckon he's going to be a little trans evangelist too. I think at this point in our movement, what I would say is it's time for our allies to step in, step up and interrupt and push money towards trans-run organizations so that we can establish more leaders and so that we can take up space. I think that that's brave and I think that that's appropriate. So what I feel like bravery it is when it comes down to is accepting and loving and knowing what you need to do to survive and doing it. And that's how we do. So that's how I wanted to kind of start off this. and just kind of open it up to questions. I mean, I love to tell stories. I love to be engaged with folks. I think that I would hope that many of you have already attended Trans 101s and know the basic things. You can see in the slide when I talk about gender expansive, who I'm talking about. I'm talking about, so there's the binary. You've got over here, you've got humans who come out of their mother and their external genitalia. And the doctor says, you are a boy, here is your child, here is your male child. And then the other end of the spectrum, you come out of your mother and they look at your external genitalia and they say, here is a girl, here is your girl child. Raise that child in accordance with the guidelines set forth by American culture, pink, blue. And then there's everybody else in between. So if that was a 12, the boys, a 1, the girls, the Metro Trans Umbrella Group supports everybody from a 2 to an 11. It's broad, it's beautiful. You know, I was definitely, when I was being, I'm old. The folks in the organization, I am definitely the old man. I'm very close to 50 years old. And so when I was being raised, the pronouns available were he and she, period. I mean, I do remember the slur of a he, she, or a she, he, but the pronouns that were available were he and she. And that is just simply not the case anymore. The world is full of ways to do gender, full of ways to present. It's beautiful. And it's taught me so much. So we look at this gender expansive umbrella and we look at binary trans folks. We've got trans men, we've got trans women. And then we look over here to the non-binary folks, which according to the most recent data is the largest growing population under the transgender umbrella. Non-binary folks. Folks in that realm from 2 to 11, back and forth, all over. I'm definitely like an 8 or a 9. I'm pretty butch. I'm pretty masculine. But I also don't infringe it upon folks. I think I like to think that I walk in the world in a pretty gentle way. I'm close and kindred with women. I love women, just not of women. I remember in 2016, the great pronoun revolution. It was so exciting when I started seeing people's tags or their signatures on their emails saying their pronouns. It was so exciting. It was so like validating and cool, and people embracing neo-pronouns and using they and them for folks. It was invigorating. And I'll just say my encouragement now is that it's not a preferred pronoun, right? Like I'm not a preferred he or him. I'm a he, I'm a him. And so remove that and make it very 2021, the pronoun revolution. In 2021, it's not preferred. It just is. Over here to this slide, if I can get to it. Over here. Down here. I do want to just speak a little bit on pronouns. This will be my slightly 101. Because one of the things that I'm encouraging folks to do, in lieu of saying sir and ma'am, because I was raised in the South, yes ma'am to my mother, yes sir to my father, my whole life. But that can be really triggering and traumatizing to trans folks. So let me give you a few alternatives. I personally like distinguished guest or your honor. But really, it's just folks or comrades or friends, or even better yet, use folks' names. And if somebody tells you their name and it doesn't match the ID that you may have, or I guess in this situation, who's on your roster, just honor that name. It's a simple way to be compassionate and loving towards trans folks. I don't like to go through the surveys, through the disparities. I already kind of talked about the bravery thing with brave. I mean, as intoxicating it is for me to be a transgender person, it truly is. It is difficult. That's why the Transgender Metro Trans Umbrella Group exists. The Metro Trans Umbrella Group is a grassroots nonprofit dedicated to building power and supporting socially emotional transgender people. Before I talk a little bit about MTech, I do want to say this other thing that I thought was interesting, and maybe you all will think it's interesting. Because one of the things I hear a lot lately is that, oh my gosh, everybody's trans these days. And that's not true. That is not true. Yes, gender is a construct that is being decolonized and just deconstructed all over the place. Fantastic. When people say that everyone is trans these days, everyone has one of these things in their pocket that is like a conduit to the entire planet. When I was a young transgender person, I had to go to the library and like sneak around and try to find a book about transgender people. They did not exist. Judy Blume did not write a transgender book as much as I wanted her to. But now we've got this access to the world. And so this is a graph. This is just something interesting that I like to kind of talk about with folks, that it shows the significant increase in left-handedness over the past 100 years. Not because it's trendy to be left-handed, but because people are no longer punished for being left-handed. There've always been left-handed people in the world, just like there's always been transgender people in the world. But now, children are no longer made to feel ashamed of it. The apparent increase in numbers of trans young people isn't because it's trendy, it's because it's more support for trans people and for ourselves. And we can have access to possibility models through these phones and through the media. And we have support through groups like the Metro Trans Umbrella Group. I am so proud of the Metro Trans Umbrella Group. I helped co-create that organization in 2013. Before that, one of the reasons we created is because one of our matriarchs died. Her name was Blue. She was a trans mama, and she would take in all the wayward trans. And she'd buy us cigarettes, and we'd sit around her backyard and have a fire. And she had cancer, and she died. And we were poor, and we were not organized. And she really wanted to be buried a certain kind of way. And we had no way to bury her that way because we weren't organized. We had no power. I asked a few of my gay friends who have that power. They're like, So we're like, okay. So we organized because we knew that in order to get our needs met, we were going to have to build a powerful force of individuals who would not be left out. And so I just started inserting myself in meetings. Anything that had LGBTQIA within a 30-minute radius of St. Louis, I would bring a chair to and participate in. And slowly but surely, our little organization that started on a $250 budget in 2013 is now well over $350,000 for our budget for next year. We serve an average of 130 to 160 people a month in our online support groups that are becoming a hybrid of online and in-person. We've received fancy declarations from the mayors of different communities around us. We've received a lot of support. We've received a lot of press. We've also received a lot of death threats and hate. It's part of the work. Before the pandemic, in 3 years ago, we were given a house. We had terrible accommodations, a tiny little place. We're still trying to build power. One of our strategic plan goals was to have our own office where we could actually have people in, because prior to that, we were borrowing churches and synagogues and wherever we could have a meeting. And that was not safe for people. 3 years ago, a family who happened to have a transgender child didn't need a house that they owned, and they gave it to us. And so we made it into our headquarters. And so I can tell you that as far as I can find, there's maybe two other transgender organizations on the planet that own property. MTUG is one of those organizations. We own our own house outright, and that builds power for folks. It's a way that we don't have to rely on systems that aren't built for us to create and love on our own people. Before the pandemic, we had a small food pantry that was maybe the size of the picture in the middle. We served about 10 families a month. Once the virus hit, we started doing delivery food pantry, sort of like Meals on Wheels, but for transgender people. And we delivered over 17,000 pounds of food to well over 800 individuals. It was amazing. We did that. We took care of our own folks because that's what trans people do. The systems aren't made for us. There's not quite enough space yet, but we're creating it. Metro Trans Umbrella Group also has a clothing pantry. They're a free clothing store, so you can come in and shop and go get the clothes that are going to match your presentation, match your identity, your presentation to your identity. We have toiletries. We give out phones to people because phones are harm reduction. If you give a person a phone and you're paying their phone bill, it makes it so that they can choose to make money in ways that, in less desperate ways sometimes. We have a shower, which is also a program of the organization. If you are an unhoused transgender person, there are no safe places to shower in the city, because if you're in a shelter, they're going to accord it generally with the ID that you present. It's not going to be safe. And even if you're in, let's say, if you are a transgender woman and you're in a women's shelter, showering also could potentially not be safe because it could out you to some of your folks. So we have a shower. We provide classes. Everything is fun and empowering, is like makeup tutorials and classes to protection, how to use tasers and mace. We do all those things for our folks. We employ only transgender people, which is just so happens that all the most qualified people happen to be transgender. It's very exciting. We support and engage and center Black trans folks in the organization and do our best as a white-run organization to dismantle white supremacy and try to approach things from as least colonized position as possible. We've created our own system. We've created our own place. I mean, I believe that we're a possibility model for the Midwest. There's nothing within hundreds of miles of here that does like we do. We touch people in 5 states that get services from us. We plant little seeds of bravery in transgender people because they sit around tables with us, surrounded by people who are showing them mirrors and telling them how lovely and beautiful and deserved they are to take up every square inch of space that they do, because we don't really get that anywhere else, but we get it with each other. So I'm proud of MTUG. I love being a trans person, and I encourage my cis friends to be brave and take up that space and push through this transphobia. So I guess I could open it up for some questions. You might have any questions. This is our contact info. We're kind of opening up. I love to give tours. We have a memorial garden right around the corner where we honor our dead and we plant seeds of hope for our living. The marker on the sign says they tried to bury us. They didn't know we were seeds, which I think is lovely and fitting. Yeah, does anybody have any questions? Does somebody tell me if somebody has questions, or should I look on the chat?
I have you covered. I have you covered, yep, for the chat. I'm mysteriously here. So
this human, but
yep, I'm in the Zoom. So anyone, at this time, we are opening the floor for about 15 minutes. Hi, Tarsha, for a Q&A. I know that there is Amira and some other people in the in-person space who will take your questions. If you are in the Zoom or if you are watching via YouTube, feel free to either raise your hand in the Zoom or place your comments in the chat, and we'll pose those to our guest speaker. So we'll open the floor now.
Somebody said they're going to start using your eminence. I like that.
I also like that. We don't have any questions yet in the chat or in the YouTube chat.
I think we've got a question from the audience.
Perfect.
Sure. Well, I'm always going to plug the Metro Trans Umbrella Group, of course, but we are pretty well funded. What I would encourage people to fund right now are Black-led trans organizations. Brave Space Alliance is my personal favorite. They're out of Chicago. Fantastic organization. I also think any of the trans law centers that are fighting obscure and bizarre cases against us, I think funding those sorts of humans that are taking the charge to get us legal protections is important. We have an umbrella arm of the organization called QTPOC, which is Queer Trans People of Color. They are currently organizing and trying to come up with community funds to help folks. I would also encourage, if you make a donation to MTUG, you can mark it to go towards the QTPOC also. So I do encourage people to fund Black-led transgender organizations, because that is the most vital and the most important work that's happening right now. Do we know many folks in this greater St. Louis region? Yes. Okay. So part of what so 6 months, no, about 3 years ago, I met this woman named Colleen McNicholas, who is the head, the CEO, the lead medical human at Planned Parenthood St. Louis. And it was like I met a celebrity because I'm enamored by her work. And she and I started having conversation, and it eventually led to like talking about in the city, in the I'll get to the statistic, but in the bi-state region of like, let's say 1.9 million people, the Metro Trans Umbrella Group recommends 3 physicians that we trust with our bodies. 3. There are thousands of us, y'all, thousands. The most recent data we have is Missouri could have up to 24,000 transgender people. Backtrack. Colleen's like, we need to get some more medical services for y'all. So we partner with Planned Parenthood. We're now going to be a satellite Planned Parenthood at MTUG. It blows my mind that it's even happening. But part of what's going to happen is we're going to launch a comprehensive needs assessment survey for the state of Missouri. So I'm going to really soon, JT, have a whole lot of really good data about how many of us there are, but it's estimated between 18 and 24,000 Missourians are trans expansive, and double that for Illinois' transgender population, probably because of Chicago. And then so within the Metro Trans Umbrella Group, between our outreach and our support groups, we serve about 300 people a month. And that is not the same people, it's a rotating cast of humans, but that can give you some sort of idea. And the main way that people find us is through Facebook. So any humans that aren't on Facebook are going to have a relatively difficult time finding us. We're trying to change that. We're also going on a trans tour next summer in our partnership with Planned Parenthood, and we're going to go and recruit into the Boot Heel and out into the rural Missouri and say, hey, y'all, we are here and we love you and we want to be a resource for you and let's help you organize. And so that's exciting. Yeah, Facebook is down today, which makes a lot of my constituents. I don't do Facebook but anymore. I had to break up with Facebook, but it does make a lot of our folks, because we do, Facebook is problematic, and people also get a lot of support from Facebook. We have Facebook support groups as well as our regular support groups, and people get in there all the time. Some people only ever do that because of maybe social anxiety or distance or whatever. Folks can't necessarily do the participation. I mean, I will say that Facebook definitely built power and money for our organization. I think last year alone, we made about $34,000 on Facebook. So as problematic as that platform is, it really is, it's a way for people to organize. It's a tool. One of the things that's coming up every year. So, most nonprofits do like fundraisers, right? Do big fundraisers, do big fancy fundraisers. I've gotten invited to many a gala now that I am a fancy executive director, and they're lovely and they're posh and they cost $200 and everybody has to wear outfits like this. And so we have one of those every year. But what it is, it's a 24-hour live telethon on Facebook, and it'll be the second weekend in December. It's fun. It's exhausting. I grew up on the Jerry Lewis telethon. I'm that old. And I loved it. I used to stay up all night and just be so excited and wait for Jerry Lewis to cry and all that. I don't cry on the telethon, although I've gotten choked up a couple of times. And we do 24 hours live. We center trans and queer talent from the metro area. And actually this year we're going to have some celebrities, like national celebrities. So it's very exciting. We do interviews. We do talent. What I am currently looking for, though, is anyone who has a talented pet. That's not happened because this is the sixth one. We still haven't had a dancing dog. Really looking for a dancing dog. But you have to be a queer owner of the dog. So that's the caveat. But yeah, so look for that because it's really fun. And it's also just a creative way. So that's our gala. Everybody's welcome. You do it in your living room. We do have a stage that we have like COVID, we didn't last year, but this year we're going to have something set up like this so that people can come and socially distance and watch the show. And it's, of course, nobody has to pay to come. And that's how we do our gala, by centering our folks and just showing everybody off. But really, though, with the dancing dog, yes. Yes.
We've been having a lot of conversations about family this person speaking, to an extent, it kind of still feels like segregation. And from my standpoint, it's like, how can we propose that into gender neutral and what that? But I also know I in this weird space where I had trans students who say, I don't feel comfortable going to the restroom on campus at all.
Right.
And then I have this other students like, I should feel comfortable. So as we try to navigate that space and operating with feelings on campus, which direction we should go.
Sure. So the question from the audience is talking about bathrooms. Oh, bathrooms. I've spent so much time talking about bathrooms and thinking about bathrooms. And I just never thought that that would be like it's a big thing. It's a thing. I think if I were a trans preacher, I would do sermons about bathrooms. And the question was kind of like, how can we, you all, SIUE, support trans expansive humans who have to use the bathroom? Which is, it's just so strange to me. But I mean, so in my answer in the broadest sense, in the most beautiful life, is that the world eliminates urinals because only half or even less than half the population can even use them. And out of the 3 things that you do in a bathroom, you can only do 1 in a urinal. So I say, first of all, get rid of urinals. So, I mean, I don't think you need to build any more urinals. That being said, I believe that all bathrooms should be gender neutral, period. It's ridiculous to have segregation around it. It's ridiculous. There have been no documented cases of a transgender woman going into a women's bathroom and sexually assaulting women, period, never. If you can find it and it's true and I can snoop it out, I will apologize.
Or children.
Correct. Or children. That is a red, ridiculous herring. What I think should happen is that you should just have private bathrooms. And if you have like group stalls, everybody's got a door that they can lock. I mean, that's how it goes. I have a funny-ish story about that. But no, I think in particular in SIUE, that's so lovely and sweet that you have family bathrooms, but changing that language to just be all gendered is great. I'm not saying that y'all don't have moms and dads up on this and parents up on this campus with little ones. I'm sure that you do. You probably have more trans expansive humans potentially that need to use those bathrooms than you do small humans who need baby changing situations. All gender restrooms are great, not only for transgender people, but they are great for parents of children because you can bring your differently gendered children into the bathroom with you. And they're also great because my previous career was that as a caretaker for individuals with intellectual disabilities. I often had to take them into the bathroom and help them. When I was walking in the world as a woman, I had to take men in the bathroom with me. And unless there was a gender neutral bathroom, we just had to go home. And so, yes, let's be creative. And it's not really all that creative. And just have spaces where people can pee in peace. One of my founding experiences as a transgender person happened in a bathroom. I've been on testosterone for about 14 years. About a year in, I went to Willie Nelson concert with my mother and my sister at the Verizon Amphitheater. And I was about a year in on testosterone. I still had not had any surgeries. My body, the fat migration had started to occur. It went from my hips and my butt to my big, beautiful man belly. But I was still kind of curvy. I had to strap down my chest. But I was feeling it. I was feeling pretty butch. I was feeling pretty masked. I had about 16 whiskers growing out of my chin. You know, my voice was getting gravelier. And I was trying real hard to assimilate into male culture. But I had not made that leap yet into the bathrooms because I was frightened. I had already been harassed for decades being a butch woman in the bathroom. And I couldn't imagine what it would be like to go into a men's bathroom. I was afraid of getting sexually assaulted. That was my thing. Like, they're going to know by the way I pee, by the way it sounds, what I have. And they're going to meet me at the door. And then they're going to be like, where's your man card? Why aren't you at the... So I was afraid. Verizon Amphitheater, I had to pee. I go and I look at the bathrooms and I see the women's bathroom and the line is literally wrapped around the Margarita Hut. And I'm like, oh my God. But I do what I did for 36 years. And I go and I get in line behind the women because I know that life. And the woman in front of me snaps her head. And I'd seen that a million times as a butch woman, that snap of the head. You don't belong in this bathroom. And all I would do is push out my chest and say, the hell I don't. I am a sister as well. But that was not the life I was living now. And so this woman snapping her head at me, I'm like, oh, what you gonna do, Sarah? What you gonna do? Sir, you're in the wrong line. And I'm like, oh, I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. And she's like, I'm like, oh. So I go over, and because, you know, when I'm looking at the male's bathroom, the Margarita Hut line, the men's bathroom is like a ghost town. I swear I saw a tumbleweed go by it. And it's not like Willie Nelson. Like, Willie Nelson attracts men to his concerts. It's not like there were no men in there. It's just more efficient because of those damn urinals, I reckon. But I go in, and it is like a great scene from a musical, because I walk into the bathroom, and it's a line of urinals on the left and a line of toilets with seats on the right. And it's like the urinals lit up like little white dancers, you know, like the can dancers, or like the Radio City Music Hall women. Like, you know, you're just beautiful. It's like, oh, and I had brought my adaptive equipment because I really wanted to be able to use a urinal. And so I did. I belly up to this urinal, fumbling a little, hoping that I'm not conspicuous. And I start to pee. And I'm grinning like a Cheshire cat because I'm successfully peeing. And I'm at a urinal, and I'm looking it down as what I know from books as a urinal cake. And I'm like, I'm doing this thing. And I look at the guy next to me, and I'm like, and he's like, what? I'm like, oh, men don't do that. Men do not communicate with each other in a bathroom. Just do your business, do your business, do your business. Fly under the radar. You don't want to get assaulted. You don't want to get red. Finish. I finish. I walk over to the sink and I start washing my hands, and I'm just like, gender euphoria. That was a gender euphoric moment. And then I start to look around, and the lights dim because, like, you know, the musical's over, and all those dudes are walking out past me, not washing their hands. Ugh. And I look at the bathroom, and it's peed, and there's toilet paper bits, and it stinks, and it's gross. And I miss the women's bathroom for just a minute. But then I look at myself, and I realize I had arrived, right? Here I was, assimilating into this culture that I had so desperately wanted to be a part of for so long. And I walk out, and that was it. And yes, I can use a urinal. And it was titillating for a minute, but really it's gross and annoying. And I always am afraid that I'm going to get clocked using one. So it is funny that when I outlaw urinals, but I was delighted with using a urinal. But sometimes the delight that we have is at the oppression of others. I realize that. So that was a long answer. But yes, the bathrooms are so important, my gosh. And if you want to be loving on your trans expansive students, that is just a very simple gesture. And putting up a sign as to why is powerful, and it educates people. Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for the extra time to answer our questions. It has been, let me take this off for a second. It has been wonderful having you. Now at this time, we'll be hearing closing remarks from Dr. Jessica Harris. Dr. Harris currently serves as the Vice Chancellor for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion and Associate Professor of Historical Studies. She has served in multiple leadership roles to cultivate inclusive excellence on college campuses. Her aim to ensure all students, faculty, and staff members can bring their full, authentic selves to SIUE and achieve their full potential. Thank you for being here, and we'd love to hear from you, Dr. Harris.
Well, good evening, everyone. And on behalf of the Inclusive Excellence Education and Development Hub in the Division for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, I just want to thank you all so much for participating in this, the opening ceremony for LGBTQIA plus History Month. Also want to extend my deepest gratitude to you, Sayer, for educating us today and really challenging us. I think it's so important to really think differently about this term bravery, and particularly those who are cisgender, to really step up and stand in the gap and disrupt transphobia, and not only on campus, but also in our community. So thank you so much for those words. Really quickly, I don't know, Lindy, can you put in a link to the CSDI website? And I want to make sure that people are aware of the calendar of events this month. There are plenty, so much. In fact, tomorrow, I believe that the Impact Academy is offering a training on allyship. So if any of you are available to participate in that, please do so. There are a couple of inclusive conversations. I actually believe one of them is looking at racism in the LGBTQIA plus community. So I think that will be something worth participating in. But yeah, please just, is the link? I just want to make sure you have access. So please go to the CSDI website, take a look at the full list of events and definitely plan to participate. So just again, thank you for being here. I hope you learned something. And I hope that you do something to disrupt transphobia on our campus, and certainly continue to learn and engage with members of our LGBTQIA plus community here at SIU and beyond. So thanks again, and have a good rest of your evening.
Awesome. So for our folks online, we are going to go ahead and end the live stream as well as this recording. We thank you so much for your time with us. We are super excited to see you for additional events throughout the month. As Dr. Harris mentioned, that calendar can be found on our website. And you can also connect with our office at any time as well. If you are looking to get registered for an event, we can point you in the right direction. And so with that, we are wishing everyone virtually and in person a beautiful rest of your evening, and we look forward to connecting with you in the future. Take care, everyone.